All right, sorry we're starting a little bit late, but we are now calling our annual board meeting to order at 6:47. We have a very full agenda tonight, although a lot of it will happen in executive session. So just to go over this, in addition to our normal minutes, last month's minutes, we have two board meetings. We also called a special board meeting, so there's two sets of minutes there to look at. Our ED will give a report. Chris and Tom are not here, so I'll give the update on the complaint investigation. We've got committee chair elections that have to happen. We're going to discuss strategic planning, the faculty and family survey results to date, the interim results. We'll do task force updates and then committee and task force assignments, and then we'll go through a final, or I guess the 2017 Ed Committee report, which will be a substantive report, and then brief updates from the others. We should do trustee nominations first, actually. Why don't we do that? And then we will go into executive session to discuss litigation strategies, to consider the purchase and lease of real property, to discuss strategy for negotiating with represented and non-represented personnel, because doing so in open session would compromise our position. So I would also like to note that the meeting is being videotaped. Are there any questions on the agenda? Does anyone else want to move things around?
No questions, just is there somebody who could be a timekeeper to just keep things moving along since it is such a large...
Oh, yeah. That would
Ken, could you please be a timekeeper?
And be really like...
I will be a very competent timekeeper.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
There has been an issue.
Okay, so our first order of business is to look at the minutes.
I just want you to know, I'm not a believer in timekeeping.
Oh, great.
I figured with your 4 hours of sleep, Ken, you'd be the best person to manage the job.
I like it.
So everybody look at the May 18th minutes first. What is that?
I think I turned on and off my mic because we're doing this. And,
Oh, and it does that?
it does that.
Oh, wow.
Should we go back to you?
Just open them. We want to forget the AMSA.
I'm sorry, what did you...
If there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the May meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve the minutes as they are written.
Liz, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Please take a look at the meeting minutes from the special board meeting from Friday, June 2nd.
I would have expected a little bit more detail. It's a little short.
It is very short.
Oh, I'm sorry, I digress. I'm violating the time.
Yeah. So, motion, so that one pretty much you need to check if you
I make a
were-
motion that we accept the minutes from June 15th.
June 2nd.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay.
Reading the wrong one.
June 2nd. Okay, Ken made the motion? Second. Liz, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Sarah, did you say there's no public comment? Okay, look at that, we just made up time. Okay, faculty rep update. Tom.
Okay. Well, thanks, Pauline, for, by the way, to the board members, I have a written copy. I won't be sticking to it faithfully, but it's there as a sketch. I thank Pauline for allowing additional time for this final report to the board. It has more parts than usual, but I will strive to keep it all reasonably compact. The first part is dedicated to conveying the thoughts and concerns of my colleagues on the faculty. If I learned anything this year is that the prime directive for a faculty representative is exactly that, to convey the thoughts and concerns of their colleagues. And I will aim to live up to that right through this end. The second part takes advantage of this forum to share with AMSA's faculty, staff, and administration some thoughts on what has transpired during my tenure, and to specifically ask something of all of us who play a role in educating AMSA students. The third part is an equal measure of reflection and valediction. It is dedicated to you, my fellow members of this board. Finally, I will conclude with a statement to the AMSA community, which all this sounds a lot like a lot better. I'll make it compact, I promise. Okay, the faculty report per se. We are in finals week. We are ready for summer, we really are. Next week we'll be busy with cleaning, prep for having things set for summer and for the next school year. There will be a move-up day and a step-up day, which will be a chance for our students to get an early glimpse of what they'll be facing in the fall. And of course, we'll be celebrating stuff. So in that sense, it should be a fairly interesting and fun week. This week, the faculty roundtable was held, and not many teachers attended in person, though many had talked to me ahead of time to ask me to convey their thoughts. I will say that the thoughts of those who were there were, in my view, accurate indicators of faculty concerns. In particular, concerns as to the conditions which allow for or discourage the retention of faculty. These conditions are especially the financial ones, and their concern for these is clearly evident among my colleagues. It's not really as much a concern for people like me who are older, and you have a sense of how bounded our time is here, and we're not trying to think of a great long run. But it's definitely a concern for our younger faculty, where many of them are very gifted young people with tremendous promise for the future. And it weighs heavily on them as they confront the tension between their commitment to AMSA and their responsibilities to their own futures and families. Looking forward to the fall, the faculty understand and share the unease and uncertainty that comes with being free of our lease. However, the faculty is also filled with hope and anticipation for what is now possible. There is ample room for creativity and imagination at this point. I want to say this, as I've said before, and I'll say it again. Teachers, many teachers, almost everyone I speak to, has asked me to convey their thanks to the board for all that has been achieved for AMSA this year. The second part is where I'm speaking to everyone, but I have in mind my fellow faculty members. I just want to tell them that when I was voted in by my colleagues as faculty rep, I had no real idea just exactly what I was getting into. My imagination was not up to the reality. In particular, I had no clue as to how ominous the word throne actually could be. I won't press that issue. I'll leave you to imagine that. It was interesting learning all this, however. It has been, in many ways, a valuable education for me. And I will say this, the destination we have arrived at absolutely justifies the journey we took. Now, what have I learned from all this? Just speaking for myself. This is not me now speaking as representing faculty thought, this is myself. First of all, obvious things which we keep forgetting in life. The right people make all the difference. Simple to say, hard to achieve, and many times we actually stop even trying for that. The right people make all the difference. Determination, resilience, grit, the whole shebang of English words that on that element of character where simply refusing to give up is what matters, it can all make a difference. Having leadership that genuinely cares for what it leads is essential. I could shout that to the skies. Leadership that genuinely cares for what it leads is essential to any organization that hopes to live up to what it aims to be. Now, for the faculty, for everyone at AMSA, all the AMSA community, but here I'm speaking to my fellow faculty members, we know we have to keep in mind, we have to never forget that what comes next will be hard. It will be very hard. We are all in a certain way exhausted. Exhausted spiritually, exhausted physically. Sometimes my eyesight is exhausted. It will ask, as we go ahead, the best of us. It will take that we keep in mind the qualities of patience, the willingness and the fortitude to reflect over what we do, to re-examine what we think is obvious and ask ourselves, is it? To always keep in mind a good that we're aiming for, to force ourselves to sustain the best as we go forward. Also speaking to my fellow faculty members, I'm very happy to announce that Ms. Brianna Murphy was elected to be the new faculty rep for this next year. And all I can say is, in Brianna Murphy, I trust. And by the way, again to my colleagues, I very much look forward to being a teacher, and nothing but a teacher, for a long and happy year. Okay, so the last section is, again, directed to everyone, but have in mind here the members of the board we see around us. My personal greatest thanks to this board for being the engine which transformed where we were to where we are, and will continue to work as to where we may be. You may have heard these words of thanks quite a bit now, perhaps. I want you to understand that it's not common at AMSA for people to express so consistently real thanks. So enjoy it while it lasts. I just want to take. I don't want to waste our time. So I'm just going to spend just a moment trying to encapsulate in a short form, something I've thought about over many years, in which I've been part of discussions with fellow teachers, with administrators, with board members, with parents, and with students, and my wife. And that is, why does the Advanced Maths and Science Academy Charter School exist? It seems that very often in our history, we have had leadership that, if they ever did ask themselves this question, it was to answer, beats me. We had leadership that resented the word advanced. The idea of people growing to achieve the most of their potential just wasn't a part of their frame of thought. That we have others, and everything I'm saying is true from my own experience, who had no respect for the word math. I don't need it. I don't see why we should value it. I've had others who found the same thought for science and academy and charter. The only word that escaped us was school. It is fundamental for us as we move forward, taking a longer-term picture of things, to not forget that there is a purpose to this school, a great purpose. It's not just to be just another school. Anyone who starts speaking that way has lost sight of what we're about and why we exist. If we are going to be, if that aim to be was just another school, who needs us? Think about it. We know this. Who would need it? As we go ahead, I hope all faculty, I hope administration, I hope the board, I hope the parents, I hope the students, I hope those who have any kind of attention towards AMSA, keep in mind that there was this very great and special reason why we even came to be, and ask themselves, how can we sustain it? Another comment I want to have is on the gift of foresight. It's such a tricky thing, right? And many people think foresight means a kind of predictive quality. I can tell you what's going to happen on that horse race tomorrow. Or, I can arrange that the election will turn out the way you like, and that kind of stuff. But we know that's not really what it's not about just spying out the shape of things to come. It is always keeping in mind how what we do today gives shape to those things to come. What we do locally in the short term, in the moment as we react to the now, always has to be conscious of, be alert to the reality we're part of something much greater, both in time and in space and perhaps in the meaning of things. And we should ask ourselves, when we do a certain decision now, have we thought through what it might mean for what we are hoping to be, what we claim to be, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now? If we ever lose that ability to think through the longer run, we will fall back to what we were, a reactive, blind school, hitting and bouncing as if we hardly had a purpose to ourselves. Finally, I'd like to make a comment to the whole AMSA community. Many people throughout this past year and previous years, for many years, who are no longer here as parents, or as students or as friends of AMSA, many worked very hard, acted with courage, with purpose, even through pain. They gave support. They were determined. Sometimes they forgave. They showed forbearance. And they have all contributed to making this moment right now, which I can tell that for you, that for me, it is pure celebration, have made this moment in AMSA's history possible. And to whoever you are, wherever you are, if this is now a moment of rebirth, may you be part of the life to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Tom?
Thank you. Beautiful, Tom.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you for working with us this past year.
Yes, thank you very much,
It's been a
Tom.
real pleasure.
It has been,
I have more to say, in terms, Tom's been great to have on the Education Committee, but it's always been good to hear your perspectives at the board meetings too, so I appreciate your honesty and completeness.
Thank you.
I would add to that also, I have really appreciated your support at the governance meetings, your attendance there, the frequency at which you attend. I don't think you've ever missed a meeting, but just your inputs and overall perspective, especially representing the faculty, I think it's been very invaluable, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And your kind demeanor, Tom. Very kind.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It's been great to work with you. You
And
brought
it's
a
been great
lot
to work with you.
as your predecessors, but you've shined like a star, and we've appreciated it.
thank you. Liz?
Okay, two quick things, and then I would just like to make an introduction as well. The first is around transition services for our students on IEPs and 504s. This recently came up at the parent roundtable, and it also came up as I was asking for feedback for tonight. And there was just some concern about what we're doing to ensure that students on IEPs and 504s are graduating and they're going on to do great things after they leave AMSA, and that the parents know what sorts of services and what sorts of opportunities are out there for them. So that was something, and that came up because I think there was some concern around some students who didn't graduate this year. So we just want to make sure that that's being looked at as we move forward with the special ed, because I know that there's a task force in place for that. The second thing is around the facilities task force. Similarly, at the parent roundtable and also at the faculty roundtable this week, there's obviously a lot of questions around where AMSA may be physically in the future. And so I think that everybody understands that there's only so much we can say right now, but I just would say that there's a lot of questions and concerns. So as we can communicate, I think we should, that's all. Finally, tonight is my last night as the parent rep. So I would just like to thank the board. I've had a wonderful 2 years here, and I wanted to introduce Jill Schaefer, who has been elected by the board of the PTO to be the parent reps beginning in July. And Jill is actually a lawyer who practices out of Worcester. She has her oldest child actually attended 6th through 10th grade and then went on to the Mass Academy. And she just started over this year with a 6th grader, her youngest. And she practices law in Worcester, and she also has a child who is in Hudson High School, so she works on their school improvement council as well. So she's got some great perspective, both legally. I'm sure, Allison, you would appreciate another legal person.
Well, no, we appreciated the human resource aspect too.
And then she also has the perspective of what's going on in the public school system as well. So just looking forward to introducing Jill to the parent group as well as the board tonight.
That's great. So actually, I was going to say, let's have Liz or Jill and Brianna come up and do brief introductions, and we'll move up our elections of our new trustees to now. So we're going to readjust the agenda a little. So Jill? I'm going to be calling her Liz now. Parent rep is just like Liz in my head.
I feel like Liz said it all.
Yeah.
My last name is Schaefer, but my kids are Lopresti, so if anyone was curious why I never changed my name when I got married. I'm honored that the PTO nominated me. I'm looking forward to working with the board. Like she said, I'm an attorney. I split my practice between civil litigation and business and commercial transactional work. So I get a little bit of both. And then I'm looking forward to helping on whatever committee needs me, doing whatever you guys need me to do.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, I've already lobbied for education.
I'm sure you did. And I feel bad because Chris isn't here to lobby for development. When you see the
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
So we actually do need to do a formal vote to accept the PTO's nomination. So this would be, so I'm looking for a motion to accept Jill Schaefer as the parent representative from July 1st, 2017 until June 30th, 2018.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yes, I
Okay, Liz is going to make that motion.
so moved.
Second.
And Ken seconds. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, congratulations. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Jill. You'll need to check with Sarah at the end of the day, so she'll get all of the stuff that you need to submit to these. Okay? And Brianna, so I'll ask you to do the same.
So I'm Brianna Murphy, and I'm currently finishing up my 5th year teaching here at AMSA. I was just telling Ellen that I had a little Facebook memory today that on this day 5 years ago I did my model lesson and was hired.
Oh.
So it's pretty appropriate that they were doing
That's funny.
Yeah, very weird. So I've always taught middle school and high school here. Currently I teach 6th grade ancient history and 10th grade US 1. Next year I'll be keeping 6th grade and then doing AP US for the 2nd time, taking it from Dr. Lewis, and then doing a new citizenship elective that I'll be designing this summer too. I'm really excited to be coming on as faculty rep. I was on the negotiation committee for the contract for 2 years, so a little bit of an understanding of the inner workings, but I'm really looking forward to representing the faculty and all the different concerns, and especially at this time of rebirth, like Tom was talking about. So you can really feel it as much as we're really exhausted and ready for the school year to end. There's a lot of hope and a lot of optimism for the future too.
Thank you.
So, motion
Make a motion to accept Brianna Murphy as,
I second.
does he, faculty rep? Yeah.
for the next year.
For the next year, from
Yep.
July 1st, 2017 to June
There we go.
30th, 2018.
Okay, all in favor?
For a minute.
Great.
Second.
Liz.
I did.
Yeah. Liz is getting in all her, you
Yeah,
know. Okay, so before we move on to sort of the new trustee candidates, I wanted to summarize a little bit. I talked to Scott Ladner today, and he could not be here. This is his last board meeting, where he's a trustee, which he isn't here. And he obviously hasn't been here for a while. But Scott really wanted, well, first of all, see, this is a problem with me saying what Scott said, because Scott wanted to apologize to his fellow trustees that he has been so unavailable the last 6 months and that he hasn't been able to come. And I told him that I didn't think that was really necessary, because the 2.5 years that he was here, he was such an integral part of the board. He spent so much time, as you know, at the very beginning in hiring our interim and our searches that we had, because he really ran that whole process. He helped us with so much of that early on, and his perspective I personally found incredibly valuable. So Scott wanted to say 2 things. One, that he really enjoyed his time on the board. He really loved working with all of you, and so he wanted to keep in contact. I think he's probably on LinkedIn with a lot of us. And the second thing that he wanted to say to the school was that, you know, Scott felt he wanted to say that he disagrees with people who think that there's a lot of concern about the demographic of the school changing, because he believes that the teachers and the students here have created a culture of learning that is so unique and that he thinks that is just going to continue. He's very happy that, there's been so much change in 2017, but he really felt that the school was on a good trajectory, even with all of the chaos that there had been, just because of the foundation that was there and the culture that was built, and that was something really special. So, just wanted to make sure I said that. So, I will miss him, that's for sure.
Ditto on that.
Yeah. And just so you guys, he is now CEO of the largest corporate recycler in the U.S. with, in 40 states, and he's moved the headquarters from St. Louis here to Massachusetts, so he is at least not traveling quite so much. So he's around for coffee.
So if I could just say, unfortunately Scott isn't here, but thank you to Scott and Liz and Tom. I know all of you have made a lot of sacrifices, personal sacrifices, to help the board and the school, and so a very, very sincere thanks for all your service.
Thank you. Okay, so can you go ahead and nominate our 2 new trustee candidates?
We have 2 potential board members tonight up for being nominated, which we need to vote on. Both have gone through the process that the board has for new trustees. We have both Raul Perez and Eugene Pettinelli, if I pronounced that correctly. Okay. And so first, Raul, who is an engineer by trade, lots of experience working with customers and sort of challenging, customer interaction and solutions. Has a strong STEM background. Started the STEM Alliance, the Latino STEM Alliance, to promote science and math among students, specifically with a focus on robotics, and has a strong interest in joining the governance committee. So I think it would be appropriate at this time to ask Raul if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, for that introduction. I think a few months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, all I knew about AMSA is what's easy for everybody to know, what everybody knows about AMSA, which is its tradition of excellence and how good of a school it is. It was a little bit of a surprise to me, even though I'm a little ashamed to say so, that that's not easy to accomplish. And what I've learned is that you guys have made a lot of progress, and you and the board have worked very hard to put the school on the right trajectory. And through my conversations with you and through the visits when I was here with Dr. Lewis, who actually walked me through the whole school, the most common theme, which I'm still hearing today, even with Tom's very moving goodbye, is hope. And I think, and you guys have said this to me multiple times, it's a great time to be joining the board. So I'm actually very excited, and it sounds like that feeling of hope, and everybody thinks very positively about the future. Everybody feels very comfortable where the school is today, addressing those challenges from the past and continuing that tradition of excellence. I'm very proud for you guys to be considering me to be part of this. And I hope that, and I'd be happy to talk more about my background for those that haven't heard enough about me, but I hope that I can bring something to the table on that. And like I said, being an engineer by trade, having experience in the nonprofit world, makes me very excited to bring that to the table. And I've also said, very selfishly, I want to be part of a board that works, and I think you guys have demonstrated that this is a very, very positive and very productive board for the school and for our students. So looking forward to it, and again, thank you for considering me.
Thank you.
So are there questions? Yeah, people have questions.
I'll
for
just
Raul?
say that the education committee is a lot more fun than the government.
Why don't we vote on?
And
Why
if
don't
you
we
do
vote
join
on
the
that?
education committee, you can always join a second one if you really want to join governance.
You're late, Ken.
Yeah, does anyone have questions? And Raul's a Marlboro resident.
Yes.
So,
Any questions?
questions?
So Raul's nomination would, if elected, would become effective August 1st. And if there are no other questions, then I would make a motion to nominate Raul to the board beginning August 1st.
Yeah, I'm trying to calculate that. That's going to be August, the term would be August 1st until June 17th to June 30th,
220.
21. August is, it's 3 years and then you round up,
Yep, 21.
so 21.
Okay.
I'll second.
Oh, wait, who made the motion?
I made the
Oh,
motion.
okay, all right. All right. All in favor? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Raul. 21. Correct, yeah. Yes,
Do we ask Raul to join us up here?
we can't do that until August 1st.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So,
Secondly,
Once you get up, Raul, there's no getting out. Yeah, you come to California, you check in, we say, you don't check out.
I mean, unless you move to St. Louis, apparently, right?
But now that you said he moved back, my brain was already, but I don't want to say anything, okay.
Secondly, we have Eugene Pettinelli, who some of you or many of you may know, has taught here at AMSA, I believe, the last 6 years. And Tom, I believe you said the other night you actually hired Gene into the math department.
I was the one who interviewed him first for hiring.
Interviewed him first, okay. Strong academic background by trade engineering also, electrical engineering, undergraduate bachelor's, master's, and then also a master's in business. Gene worked very much in private industry before coming to AMSA. General partner of Cambridge Light Partners, early stage technology incubator company, and member of the National Venture Capital Association. General partner and officer of Fairfield Venture Partners, and also member of the technical staff at MITA Corporation. And so strong STEM background, and again, having been at AMSA for the last 6 years, and so certainly has experienced the ups and downs of AMSA, as well as made contributions to our faculty and the development and learning of all of our students. So Gene, if you'd like to share a few words.
we should clarify that Gene is retiring from AMSA this year,
Yes.
so he will
Thank you.
not be a teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been 6 years and they've been incredible years. And I just have come to love AMSA. More importantly, though, I've gotten this sense of inspiration from some of the people here. And the primary person has been Tom, who, like a rock thrown into a stone and we see wheels go out, he's touched everyone in the community. And I can only say it's inspirational. And he's the person that has made me want to continue and help the school, and I just hope that I can. And thank you for not, electing me.
So are there questions for Gene?
So I'll
I know
just say
not
that
everybody's met.
Gene has agreed to join the cool kids at the education committee table. Thank you, Gene.
Yeah.
Raul, it's not too late.
Not everyone has had a chance to meet Gene, but I mean, he has been through our process, that I just wanted to leave it open if people had questions.
So I will say that having talked with Gene and talked about his background, he does have a strong governance background too. So he'll be a complete member of the board in terms of being able to provide multiple perspectives.
Yes, we will still shamelessly.
Okay, if there are no questions, then I will take a nomination.
Okay. So I propose that we nominate Gene to the board effective July 1st.
No, it's July 1. We worked it all out.
July 1st, yeah.
Yeah, we worked it all out. Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All hands went up, Gene.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, who's second?
You can give it to Ken.
All right, Ken.
Actually, voice.
Now give it to Liz.
Ken or Liz, who's seconding?
Liz will win.
It's
Okay,
okay, either
okay.
way, Sarah.
All right, all in favor? Okay, motion passes unanimously. So welcome. New board members.
July 1st. 2021?
No, June
No.
2020.
Yep.
Yeah, it's different.
Oh, it's tricky.
Yeah. All right. So it's very exciting that we're going to have
Yes.
new board members joining us over the next couple of months. So it's great. We have a pretty robust recruiting process, so these new board members are exposed to a lot of what has been going on already. So they should be pretty up to speed on a lot of the issues that we have going on. So let's move on to our executive director report.
Okay. First, I've got the remarks there for all of you to take a gander at. I, too, want to thank Tom for everything that he's done for our school, and welcome Brianna as well. And Tom and I had a very nice conversation yesterday, and he inspired the last part of this report, very much so. So there are three things I wanted to talk a little bit about today. First, I wanted to congratulate the class of 2017. We had the ceremony this past weekend. It was absolutely fantastic, and it was just great to see the smiles, the laughter, and all of the hugs. There was one kid who gave me this long hug, and it was really fantastic, and just to have that sense of spirit and joy was wonderful.
I've never seen so many
many
students
hugs.
hug administrators
Yeah.
before.
It was beautiful.
Amazing.
It was great.
Running to hug, yeah.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
So we congratulate the class of 2017, and we welcome the class of 2024. This past Friday, we had hard to imagine. Yeah. We had a pizza and games night that was a lot of fun. The kids were having a good time. And just seeing that and helping them meet fellow students and start making friends is so important. So congrats to 2017 and welcome to the class of 2014.
No, 24.
I'm sorry, 2024, yes, 2014, 2024.
That sounds really far.
It's amazing, yeah. And last but not least, I want to thank the Math and Science Department for kicking off the Science and Innovation trip that they're going to be taking to England next year. On June 6th, Jack Marshall introduced students and parents to the proposed trip, which will be 2018, and will make Miss Richards' calendar much more difficult. We're really excited about all these trips that we'll be taking. We have 3 big trips that we'll be taking next year. The Science and Innovation trip, as well as the ELA department. Miss Waldron is leading a trip to Japan, and the Foreign Language department is leading a trip to Italy. And I think those trips are just fantastic on so many levels. They're fantastic learning opportunities for kids to reinforce what they learn in the classroom. They're fantastic opportunities for kids to grow as people as they go off away from parents into big cities. And it's just an amazing, the best, I would say, as a teacher, the best professional development opportunity as well for teachers. So we're really looking forward to that next year. Second thing today, as many of you probably know, we received the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education site report this past week, which was a very extensive report on how things are going at AMSA. On the positive side, if you haven't seen it, the D-Site report stated that we're meeting several things. We're meeting instructional requirements. We're meeting cultural and family engagement requirements. They say when they say we meet these requirements, they give us a color. They color code everything. So we're in the green. So green means meet. We meet professional climate requirements and governance requirements. So that was good. On the other hand, the D-Site report called attention to a few areas in need of improvements, and these areas are marked as yellow, indicating that we partially meet the specific requirements. So the report declared that we partially meet access and equity requirements, we partially meet assessment and program evaluation requirements, we partially meet requirements for support of diverse learners, and we partially meet requirements for school leadership. So I was a little bit nervous and apprehensive when we received the report, but the report and all constructive criticism of the school is really an absolutely wonderful opportunity to kind of shine a light on our school and to see what we can do better and how we can improve our school and how we can develop a close relationship with the Department of Education, which really wants us to succeed. So I can assure you that Principal Lindsay and I very much welcome the feedback that the D-Site report has provided us, and we're very much focused on using it to help improve AMSA. We are particularly focused, as Ellen reported last week at the last board meeting, we're particularly focused on improving our ELL program and our special education programs, which will address many of the concerns that were raised by the D-Site report.
Is that report
Are there any questions
available?
about that? Yeah. What?
Is that report available on the AMSA site yet?
We haven't put it up on our website, but we can.
Okay. You were saying that you were glad to share it. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Finkel?
Yep.
I can, oh.
There we go.
Okay, that'd be great. I can give it to you. Oh, great.
I mean, I'll just add that the board part of that, as you know, at the last charter renewal, our charter was renewed with conditions. Those conditions are ongoing. Part of the board piece of it was evaluation of the school leader, and so Dees is obviously very interested in seeing how we're going to evaluate the ED. So that was just our piece of it.
So last but not least, the school year is coming to an end, as Tom noted, and we're starting to move on to and think about next year. So I thought it would be appropriate to talk a little bit about goals for next year. As you know, over the past several months, Ms. Lindsay and I have been focused on attaining and achieving 3 core goals: retaining our teachers, creating a new PD program, and improving our schedule. And we have, I think, most definitely thanks to the hard work and commitment of the entire AMSA community, particularly our teachers and counselors, we have made progress. But I know we can and we absolutely will do very much more. And this coming year, Ellen, Ms. Lindsay, and I would like to focus on 2 very broad goals, goals that we hope, if we can accomplish these 2 broad goals that we hope can create a sense of vision and a sense of purpose for our school. So our first goal is to make AMSA a shining light. We want to make AMSA the model school of the entire Commonwealth. We want to turn all the yellow lights in the Dees report to green, which means we meet the requirements, and then we want to turn those lights to blue, indicating that we exceed state requirements. We had no blue indicators. We need blue indicators. We want to make AMSA a shining light academically. We want to make AMSA a shining light professionally for students, for parents, and for staff. So to make AMSA a shining light, we need to meet our second goal, and our second goal has to do with spirit. We want to, Ms. Lindsay and I want to boost AMSA spirit to the highest level ever. It's a tough goal, but that is our goal. We want to boost spirit to the highest level ever for students, for parents, for staff, for alumni, and for the board. Without spirit, it is very hard to accomplish any goal. It's very hard to move an institution. It's very hard to move a school without spirit. With spirit and with high morale, we can move AMSA as we have never been moved before. It is amazing to think what we have accomplished with the not terribly high morale that we've had at our school. If we can achieve that high level of morale and high level of spirit, it is amazing to think what we can do. So to do this, to boost spirit, we need to guarantee that AMSA is a responsible and caring school where students are emotionally and physically safe, a school where administrators listen and work openly and democratically with students, teachers, and parents to solve problems, be it AMSA's class schedule or a search for a new campus. We need to be a school that quickly and effectively communicates. Mr. Finkel is going to be one of the busiest people in this school. He already is. And it's just going to pile-on. I keep going into his room, I've got another idea, I've got another idea.
I don't know, you guys seen, there's like little videos now, like little how-to videos that are getting sent out.
Mr. Finkel does a fantastic job. We want to be a school that can create a sense of unified purpose while also celebrating and cherishing our differences. A school where teachers and staff are retained, where they thrive, and where they grow. A school with a strong and sustainable evaluation, professional development, and mentoring program that support and enrich our teachers and counselors and result in outstanding student growth and achievement. So meeting these first two goals will help create, I hope, a sense of vision for our school. Meeting our first two goals will enable us to steady our ship and then to set sail for distant horizons. This coming year, and I know the board is going to be talking a bit about this today, this coming year the board and the administration will be working with the entire AMSA community to explore what all of us think about AMSA and what we believe AMSA is all about. And this will be a wonderful opportunity to engage each other in a very broad and very open conversation. And I hope that as we engage in this process, we also take the chance to reflect upon the vision of AMSA that's provided by our charter. In its design and still today, AMSA is a demanding school with a very rigorous curriculum. And we embrace that and we celebrate that. AMSA is a school of high expectations. AMSA is a school that challenges our high achievers. AMSA is a school that fights tooth and nail for our kids that struggle. AMSA is also a school that embraces the joy and the beauty of knowledge. Much of schooling can be very practical. Math for the purpose of learning how to balance a checkbook, or literature for the purpose of learning how to write a resume. But I think the heart of what we do at AMSA is so much more. It is learning for the love of learning. It is learning for the purpose of exploration. Not so much to learn how to balance a checkbook, but to explore space and the vast and great unknown. Very much as Tom mentioned. It is learning for the purpose of turning on the light in each and every one of us. It is learning to study and grapple with all that was, all that is, and all that could be. Above and beyond all of this, AMSA is a school where each and every one of us believe that all children, regardless of background and regardless of ability, can excel in all subjects and can learn at an advanced level. Principal Lindsay and I and the entire AMSA staff are looking forward to making this vision a reality in 2017, 2018. Thank you.
I am so inspired. Seriously.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Are
You have
there
5
any
minutes left.
questions?
You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Ken.
You can use whatever you talk about, whatever you want for 5 minutes. Any questions?
No, just thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Lewis.
thank you.
Amen.
Okay. Moving on to chair business. I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, the complaint investigation. Where's the first thing that comes up? I'm like, maybe I should move this around. We'll follow this very inspiring speech with the fact that we have a complaint to the board that was assigned to Chris and Tom, neither of whom are here, but I have a report from them. So the complaint is a discrimination complaint. The task force reached out to these people by email in April, reached out to them in May, received no response, sent a certified letter on June 8th and gave them 7 days to respond, and they did not respond. And so the recommendation of the task force is to close out the complaint. So, are there any questions? I mean, I can tell you more, but that's pretty much what it was.
So 3 attempts to contact, 2 by phone, 1 by certified letter.
Correct.
With a date certain to respond.
Yep.
No communication back.
Correct.
Typically, the complaint process provides an open line of communication to the complainant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think we would have any option at this point but to conclude it.
What did you say the general nature of the complaint was?
It's a discrimination complaint.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions then? Yeah, I mean, that's that's why it's their recommendation, right? There's no,
Can't move forward unless you have an ability to communicate with the complainant about what the facts are that they're alleging.
I mean, and I assume even if we close it out, they could always reopen it if they feel
yeah,
somewhere down the
exactly. They
road.
can file another complaint. I mean, they just,
Makes sense.
I mean, I thought the task force did a good job actually sending the certified letter, to make sure that it got there.
Above and beyond.
So, okay. Anyone disagree? Then let's take a motion to close out the complaint.
I'll make a motion to close out the complaint at this time.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Liz, seconding.
I'm
Liz.
getting all
Liz
my
this
work
time.
into it.
She's the last time.
Yeah. All right.
No.
All in favor? Okay. The complaint is closed. We'll report back out. We do need to do, we need to do like this basic business, and then we have other interesting things to do. Let's do something interesting. I'm gonna move this around. Let's do the faculty and family survey results. Can we do that next?
Sounds good. Okay, yes. Actually, if you have a 2-minute thing or something, is there anything that's really quick so I can just bring this up?
I guess we could do the committee chair.
Time's up.
Committee chair elections, Ev, we could do that quickly, right? Oh, I guess that's really, yeah.
Yes. Do we have that project?
Well, the committee chair elections we can do just orally, right? So the way that our bylaws work, we elect our committee chairs every other year. And this is the odd year, so we will be re-electing. The proposed slate would be actually to keep all the existing committee chairs because they're all in their first term. So for Development Committee, that would be Chris O'Keefe. For Ed Committee, that's Ken Estabrook, in case no one noticed. And Governance would be Ev Reynolds. So does anyone object to that slate? If not, we could just vote that all in at once. We'll take a motion for these.
I make a motion that we accept the current slate of committee chairs.
Okay.
As so stated.
Yep. Liz?
Sure, I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Okay, we have committee chairs for the next 2 years. All right. There, that was my 2-minute thing.
Okay, great. How are we doing for time, Ken?
You're behind already.
All right.
Yeah.
Just going to review at least a preliminary review of how we've been doing with the faculty and family surveys. And I want to just shout out to Ben Keeler for helping out a lot with this process. So we, as folks know, we have been, for the last couple of years, leveraging Panorama, an outside third party, to survey our faculty as well as our families. And this year is no different. I just wanted to share that we only have preliminary results, especially in the context of the family survey, because this survey is open, if I recall correctly, till the end of this month. So we've only got 16%. So I don't want to focus too much on the family survey yet because we don't have a very large sample, but we do have a large response on the staff side for this year, and so we can go through that. And just in terms of response rates, we see a pretty healthy response rate on the staff side. It's pretty consistent with history.
Rick,
Yes.
so if the family survey is still open,
Yes.
I wonder if we should even show those results.
Yeah, I don't plan on doing that.
Yeah, right.
We're just going to focus on
We've got
staff.
preliminary data.
So with that,
Why is it pink?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
I kind of like it.
you like it? Okay. So it might be a little challenging because for some reason the screen isn't measuring up to or mapping to proper resolution. But I just want to share a few things. So if you look at some of the key areas we've had challenge in the previous year versus this year, we see tremendous improvement. I mean, tremendous improvement. So an example is AMSA morale. So if you look, it's gone up according to Panorama and the way they evaluate things, up 40% over last year. However, that doesn't tell the full story, because if you look at the details, the AMSA morale survey, and I'm not going to bring up the questions because it's too difficult, but they are in your packet that you have.
Oh, but you
half
gotta
the
bring this up. It's
questions,
beautiful.
I'm sorry?
You got to bring this up. It's beautiful.
It's just not going to show up, unfortunately. But if you look at the details, half of the questions in the morale survey speak to have things improved over the last 12 months. Okay, so you don't really want to factor those into whether there's a true favorable response to the underlying question. So if you do that, actually, the favorable response is up in, I did a real quick calculation before coming here. So though it says 74%, it's actually 89% favorable from a morale perspective. So, I mean, just tremendous transformation over just a very short period of time. So that's fantastic. And in fact, just to share with folks, last year, Panorama reported that the morale was at a 34% level. Actually, if you use the same methodology I just used, where you take out how it compared to the previous year and just look at the core questions, it was actually at 26%. So we've gone from 26 to 88%. That you just. Yep. I'm looking at you because you're in this space, right? Have you ever seen anything like that ever?
Statistically, I'm not a data scientist, but statistically significant leap would be in the very small single-digit percentage leaps, right? So, you know, in corporate America, we try to go 2, 3, aspirational, maybe 5%.
I was going to say, if you went 5 to 8%,
I mean,
you'd be jumping for joy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's unheard of, actually.
Another one I'm just going to reference, and we can go next month into more detail. School climate, in terms of climate, it's gone up. It's gone up to 73%. Again, I think this is an understatement. And another area where we had a lot of concern was staff leadership relationships over the last year. That one went up to 85%. It was a 66% increase. So again, just tremendous improvement in all the challenge areas from last year. Last thing I will just share is there was a new section added, which was called school leadership. It did not exist last year. And that's at 70% responding favorably. But again, if you look at the underlying questions that truly relate to leadership, school leadership and what's at the core, the percentage is actually much higher. So again, we just see tremendous results in these core areas. So that's just a fantastic story. I think if you look at some of the other areas, we never really focused on some of those, you know, whether it's teaching efficacy or testing or teacher-family relationships so much and faculty growth mindset. I think now that we're seeing such tremendous results in this area, we can start digging a little deeper into those other areas to see where there might be an opportunity. Because I think on some of those, there's some key questions in there that I think we need to address sooner rather than later. We can talk about that next time. But again, just in terms of overall broad brush stroke view, I mean, the areas we wanted to see improvement, we've just seen phenomenal improvement.
I want to interrupt because there's this one little sub-question that says, how positive is the tone that school leaders set for the culture of the school? And I mean, it is 97% favorable.
So
we have never seen 97% anything. I mean,
so okay, I gotta. Yeah. So this is great. This is great news, to be sure.
Okay, now what are you going to bring up, Ken?
So what I'm going to bring up is the fact that people don't generally remember their ratings from survey to survey. In other words, they don't see what their ratings are. You know, so it is likely that the scores may go down next time without any sort of implication for worsening conditions. Okay, so you know this is a great result. It probably comes a little surprise. Everybody is pleased, and I think we have all the reason in the world to be pleased. I'm just saying when they sort of come back off the glow, and you know, it's sort of like, you know, the new girlfriend or boyfriend. You know, eventually, you know, that new girlfriend or boyfriend's not washing the dishes and not picking up their clothes, and you sort of come back into a normal range here. Okay, so when we get there,
I think that's called
let's just be okay with that.
It's an excellent point.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I shouldn't say when, if,
Yeah, it is.
when and
Yeah,
if.
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
there
it
is a
will
little,
happen at some
but I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been very happily married for 25 years, and there's still that glow there, so.
And you even
You
said,
pick up your clothes.
you even said that on tape.
That's right, that's on tape.
You had committed it. Can you send a version of that?
That's amazing.
So again, just fantastic. And I will share that we obviously will make all this information public. One reason we haven't yet, we obviously for the family survey, it's still going on, but with the family survey, yeah, it's going on. With the faculty survey, there are open response questions. We do need to go through a scrubbing exercise to remove that before we even make that available to the administration. So.
But Rick, it's a moot point, but didn't we set targets last year? Didn't we have a conversation that said, you know,
Yes.
how do we?
We set
define
targets for the
success?
former
they're way
ED
back
to
there.
I know.
increase by 50%.
But to Ken's point, I think there's something healthy there as we move towards the next survey, which is for us to define as a board what is success, right? So, you know, maybe 98% is not a reasonable success number, but we want to say above 90% is where we want to be. And so then if we go below 90%, it's a chance to come back and say, well, we've level set below where we want it to be. So I think that when the time is right, we should just agree as a board around what good looks like for us, so we know when we're kind of below or something. Because I think Ken's right. I think we're going to kind of level
It's gonna
out.
come-
We can
yeah,
still
it's gonna
level out
come.
above, and you know. So we should have that
Yeah,
conversation.
I completely agree. We need realistic targets.
Yeah.
I think, and one way we may want to do that, and there needs to be some conversation around that, is fortunately because we're using Panorama, we can benchmark a lot of these areas against other schools, right? And so at what level do we want to be? Do we want to be in the top 25% or the top 20% or whatever it is? Because we were in a very different position before. We're in an extreme position right now, and it should be realistic, to your point. Any other questions or comments?
So these are the same questions as have been used in the past, correct?
Yes. In fact, for the faculty survey, it was identical with the exception of one new section being added called school leadership, but the other ones are identical. So if you drill in the data, down the data, you can actually see compared to previous year results.
And I just want to clarify one thing you said. You said that you were going to remove the narrative comments. I think what you're saying is remove identifying elements in those narrative
That is
comments.
correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct. I'm sorry if I
That's the
misstated.
scrubbing that takes place.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Great. Any other questions? So we'll have more data, and the open response will get shared, including the family data when it's available, when it's closed out. But this is interim family data, just so we have it. So.
Yeah, I think there's some individual responses on here that are very gratifying to see in terms of particular areas. I mean, overall scores are great to be sure, but particular things that we've been worried about are in there too, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good, good, good.
Pauline, can I mention for upcoming items where we need to project?
Yep.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to access the board on track documents. Somehow
okay.
they've been set private. I don't know if somebody went in there and said, I was able to earlier today, so we may have challenge displaying anything that's online.
Darn it, that's me, because
Yeah.
I went and changed that setting for you, right?
What's funny is
I was gonna say,
when
it's just in there. What time were you in there, Rick?
No, I said something funny, and it
Yeah,
did something.
because I had tried to go in when she said
Yeah.
that they were all updated, and I was getting the error that I couldn't get in. So now, and she fixed it for me, so now maybe.
So now you're out, Rick.
Yeah.
So now I'm
Liz
out.
is in,
Yeah,
Rick
there's
is
only
out.
so many people. Sorry.
I think I know what I did. When you share, I was trying not to share it with everybody because, like, every time I update the agenda, if it shares with everybody, you guys get all these annoying emails. And so I was trying to keep it down.
Yeah.
And so the latest one I had only shared with me, Allison, and Sarah. And then I'm like, oh, but then nobody can see it apparently if I do that.
Yeah.
So in the future, you know, I'll just send it to all of you. You can just delete it. So, all right. I don't know that we'll necessarily need them, and we have them all here in our packet. So anyway, the next one to talk about is actually strategic planning. So, I think at least I think I sent this around before. I don't actually remember. I've talked to two different consultants who could help us with the strategic planning process, and I think that we can work with either right now, but this is the one that I would suggest that we sort of move forward with. And Cheryl Lauer is an organizational development change management consultant by trade. She has a lot of international experience. She's done, she's very good at group process facilitation and also strategic planning, but I think, bringing together a lot of multiple stakeholder groups. So that's what's very interesting about her background. And then also, she happens to be chair of the Parker Charter School and has been for the last 7 years. And so it's someone who really understands charter schools and these and sort of what the other things that we have as a school. So she came in, and Anders and Ellen had a chance to meet with her earlier this week as well. So she got even more of a background of what it is that we're trying to achieve collectively here. So what you have in front of you is her CV. So that's here for us all to look at. And then she also wrote this sort of very top line approach. And, I asked for at least a general range of what the cost might be to do this sort of a thing. So what she understands is that what we want to do between sort of now and next January is really two goals: gain consensus on what AMSA's core values are, and then really determine what the next 3 to 5 priorities that the school should focus on, for the next period of time, next 3 to 5 years, whatever it is. And to do this in a way that allows all the different stakeholder groups to have input and dialogue. And we've actually talked about multiple different methodologies. So she is not proposing specific methodologies because we didn't get to that stage of the discussion. But I wanted to at least get a sense, right, of how long this would take and what the cost would be overall. And that's what she's given us. So if we do this all, right, the way that she's talking about, like the full on everything, then this is, in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. So that is, actually exactly where the other person came into, just so you know. It was right in between. Actually, the other person was 30 to 50, but I think she was talking about an even broader thing. So I think we need to just talk about that. So what your reactions are: do we want to do it this way? Do we want to cut it back? She was willing to cut it back and do it in smaller way. This is talking about all stakeholders. So, faculty, staff, administration, parents, students, alumni, community members, board. And she would really drive the whole thing, right? And one thing that she mentioned, for example, is that there would be different ways of doing this, and we would use the next month or two, I would say, to design what the process would be, and then it would really kick off in the fall. But she is also a big fan, and I'll say this because it was very counterintuitive. I think it's counterintuitive for you too, but then when she said it, it made so much sense. Rather than holding individual focus groups, she felt it was really important to do multi-stakeholder groups so that people don't get too wedded to their own ideas. And so, it's an ambitious project to do it this way, right? We're talking about offsites, and she is talking about potentially facilitating, large group meetings with 60 or 80 people, with all different representation from the stakeholder groups.
So I'll jump in on this then, I guess, since you're asking for a perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here taking a look at the goal of the process is to gain a consensus on what our core values are and determine the 3 to 5 priorities. So I think those are important things. I guess what does that get us? Are we really not understanding what our core values are? Do we really not understand what our priorities are? It just seems like I'm trying to understand what that gets us. If we sat around, if we sat in a room with multiple stakeholders and said, what do we think our priorities are, what do we think our values are, would we really be that far off?
I think we would, actually. I think, and internally with you, talk to the stakeholders at school, we would be. I mean, if you look at the mission, I think there's a couple of themes that come out. There's the advanced, there's the math and science, there's the all backgrounds and abilities, there's the preparing for work, and I'd say it seems like different people over the years have very different priority and weighting on those values.
And so that part I agree with, but do you really think that this work is going to weigh through all that to come to a consensus of what that is? Because I'm looking at the process here, and this is a process where we define those things.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end, we know that there are different views on what AMSA's mission are, what values, what the priorities are, and so forth. At the end, we will probably be in that same position. Do we really think that this process that's been laid out, which is essentially facilitated sessions, is going to get us to a consensus? Is that what we're trying to?
That's the goal. That is the goal. I don't know about it's going to be consensus, or at least to sort of work out, what are the primary values that, and what are not. That is the goal. And the values, I would say, is even more important because, as far as I know, this exercise has never been done. Right? I mean, you know how companies define values, cooperation, innovation, whatever it is, courage. I don't think that's ever been done here. So I think articulating some of those would be helpful. But I mean, Anders, Tom, please jump in, on what you think that would be helpful for the school.
Yeah, we've never done anything like this before. I think I certainly have my own vision and sense of what AMSA is, but I think there's lots of voices in our community, and I think this is useful for several reasons. One is just so people can be heard, whatever their particular opinion and voice is. It's great to hear it, and it's great to be aware of it. And then I think and I hope that if parents and teachers and alumni and administrators express their views and their thoughts about what we are academically, what we are culturally, what we need to accomplish our goals, that from those separate conversations we can devise some really common threads that we can all rally around to give us all that common sense of purpose while also cherishing the fact that we do have lots of differences. I'm very optimistic that if we do let people speak and express their opinions, that we can achieve that. We have, I think, Pauline, several months ago when we were talked about 1,000 canoes in a river, and the goal is to get all those canoes flowing down that river. And I think one step in that process is letting people paddle their canoe in a way that they like, but trying to push them gently and slowly down that stream. And I think this would be a helpful process to do that.
I don't want to add too much to that because it's something I'd have to think through to be able to say too much. But I do think having an outside force that allows us to speak, or the community's variety of voice community to speak freely in a way that doesn't lead to faction confrontation is very valuable. I don't know if this particular company versus alternative is what's best, but I do agree that having strangers who are attentive and professional at getting people to take a discussion seriously, I think is invaluable. The only thing I would say is that language such as consensus is almost guaranteed to have failure.
Okay, yeah.
Consensus literally require, unanimity.
Yeah.
And we're never going to get.
We're not going to get
consensus.
consensus.
But I would certainly hope would be achievable from such an effort would be a common ground, a clarity as to the sorts of things which are core values and which form a foundation for future work. Clarity doesn't mean everyone says I buy it completely, but it means at least I get it, I understand, and I now know what this is about. And that clarity should have always been there, but too often has not been. So I do like this effort. Yes.
So maybe consensus isn't what we should be aiming towards, which was actually your point too, right?
Well, so I guess I was looking at that, but I was also looking at the idea of determining the 3 to 5 priorities that AMSA will focus on. I think the board is going to focus its view on one set of priorities, which is going to be different from what the school administration focuses on, and that's going to be different from what parents may focus on, the PTO or what have you. It's going to be. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to get a sense of what we're driving towards because. To use your analogy of the many canoes, not all the canoes are going to be headed in the same direction at the same pace. Some of them are going to be headed at different paces because that's what they
do by definition. Yeah.
And so, again, I'm not,
I think the intention would be the entire system, right? Like what the overall, what AMSA as a whole should be aiming towards, like where are we going in the river? And then yes, all the different, so that's all this is intended to do. Not really, it's not sort of what our annual planning process is, which is what are we focused on for the next 3 to 5 years, and then what the school is focused on for the next 3 to 5 years.
So Dr. Lewis, set forward a vision, and we're all sitting there very happy with that vision because that that's not only inspiring, but it resonates with us. This is the direction that we need to go. And again, I'm not trying to be contrarian on this, but when I buy this kind of work, I'm always looking at what is the end product that you're looking for. So, I don't know.
I think I'm maybe a little bit where Ken is at. If I think about, what's the value proposition that we get out of this, and certainly, as it says, consensus on what AMSA's core values are.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really resonated with me out of our last strategic planning off-site was that question, which was, what would make AMSA wildly successful in the next 3 to 5 years or whatever the time period was. And that one, to me, from a sort of getting the biggest bang for your buck, sort of resonates in the back of my mind that, boy, if we were able to approach that and coalesce around whatever that is, then might that give us a bigger bang for our buck potentially than some of this. Now, maybe this is the foundation.
But I think that was what it was intended to do. What are those 3 to 5 things that we would end up with? That would be the end goal, right? Of what we want AMSA to look like and where we want it to be.
Then it would be helpful for me to sort of see what is that, if we're going to define the 3 to 5 things to help us get there, then to me it would be helpful to define what is there. What is that wildly successful thing? Where do we want AMSA to be 3 to 5, 6 years from now? And then the 3 to 5 things that we need to do to get there. So starting from the end point and working backwards.
And I think one of the problems was we didn't get to that at the strategic planning session because of other issues that came up. So,
but we were trying to get there.
But do we stop this process in the meantime? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think it's all built in. Like she knows that this is kind of started already.
Okay.
And that we wouldn't redo any of that, right? I mean, we have all of the good data from the last session, so.
And it's probably going to be some flavor of stable school leadership, retaining, our faculty, and getting into a new facility. So there's your 3 priorities for the next 3 to 5 years.
See, I would say this is an opportunity to think really big.
Yeah.
And so, I think about, we do a lot of work with like futurists, right?
Yeah.
Who can come back and say, 7 years from now, let's talk about what the school of the future is going to look like, right? And reliance on technology, whatever those things are, right? So, your predecessor had some very strong viewpoints about keeping technology out of the school and you just write whatever it may be. But, there may be this, I thought that was really well said, and I was trying to articulate it myself, but trying to do the work to figure out what the there looks like
Yeah.
in a
Don't
real
think that's
big
it.
manner will keep the conversation and ultimately get us to say, okay, so over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to become technology dependent school, whatever
Right,
those
right.
answers are. And, there's some of the things that Ken was alluding to, which I think is right, are kind of the table stakes. So we probably need to focus on the present. We need to make sure that our, the faculty's here and that our adherence to charter and that we have the right building. And let's get those pieces right. But then there's this whole box that we need to focus on, which is really about creating the future.
Yeah, that
And
is.
so I think we should, and she, I was looking at her on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like I'm connected to some people with her. I don't know her, but depending on this answer,
Yeah.
would really kind of confirm or not whether or not she's the right person. There are different levels of driving strategy, right? One is to kind of really getting the bare bones right. But if I hear kind of what Ken is saying in this conversation, if we want somebody who can really help paint the future first to back into it, it might be a different skill set. I just want to point that out.
And I think that piece that we haven't talked about in so long is the replication piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's
And so,
yeah, there's
you know,
replication, there's all those other things. I mean, to me, like a new building is just something we have to do, but that is not at all a big strategic
long-term,
question.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I think who mentioned about the notion of wildly successful, getting there.
Yeah.
So I think we need that. I think we need values also because what one's wildly, ideally your wildly successful needs to align with your values. Sometimes you can have this so I think we need to get to values, we need to get to wildly successful, and then we need to figure out what the priorities are. And almost, I think the order is in fact values, wildly successful, and that, right? Because your values guide what wildly successful actually means. And I think that's
I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah.
so
That's true there.
you don't think your values define what wildly successful is?
So. I think it's a filter to kind of make sure that once you set yourself in motion, that you make sure you adhere to the values to
I
do it the
agree.
right
I
way.
agree.
You know,
I agree. It's a
something
filter
like
by
that.
which you
Yeah.
see whether it's valid or not. Maybe you don't necessarily need to, but I think you need both.
Right.
Because they have to be very much in tandem.
I think so too. I wonder whether or not that has to be part of this exercise, or is it something that we need to do? We need
The
to
values?
invest. Yeah, identify the values. We need to do that work. But I don't know if it is entirely part of this process. I think part of what Ken was saying that was interesting to me is we have this great opportunity to really put our heads together, and is that the best use of our time, or is that a piece of work that somebody's conducting concurrently and just kind of weighs in at the end? We have a discussion about it.
So.
Well, she's more of a facilitator. I would say that she's a process facilitator, so she can, I think we can guide a lot of this on where we want to end up, like we would define that. I think the values need to happen at the same time because so much of what, if we think about past leaders that we have, I think we have differed in values, not differed in where we were going, but different in how we got there.
So typical models around strategic planning will talk about understanding your mission, vision, values
Right.
before you start looking at the strategy. So the mission says why you exist, the values say how you operate, and the vision is where you're trying to go. And those things all define that context for then the strategies, those mainstream strategies. So just to clarify, I'm certainly not against the idea of doing strategic planning.
Right.
And I'm not sitting here saying that her proposal here is ill-conceived, and I'm not saying she's the wrong person. What I'm saying is, this is not well. This is not clearly defining what we all want to have. There's a
Right,
lot of wiggle
right.
room in this.
Yeah, there is,
And
there is.
before we go and start spending months
Yeah.
and spending dollars, I think we really need to be clear on what outcomes that we're expecting to have at the end.
So is it your suggestion, Ken, you think it's premature at this time?
I want to make sure that we are clear, not only as a board, but more generally as a community, about at the end, when we look at the end product, we say, yes, this achieved what we were looking for, okay? And what I look immediately at the goals of the work, gain consensus, okay? And I'm on the core values, and I'm just looking at that, I'm going, like Tom said, wow, that's interesting. And then it's like determine the 3 priorities that AMSA, well, you know, get the same thing I said. Those things, those end products need to be clarified before we engage her, so that when it's not fair to engage her in a process that is ill-defined.
Yep.
At the end, we're not where we want to be, and then we sit there and go, you didn't get us there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So again.
But I think it's up to
believe-
us to define that, right? I mean, we
Correct.
have to define where it is that we want it to be
Yeah.
and where we're going.
So the question that I think is on the table is engaging her services now, at this moment, premature. Doesn't mean we're not going to engage her
Right.
services. It's just whether or not you believe, because of these other component parts that are missing, whether it's premature at this moment in time.
I would like to propose that we probably, you know, I've only seen this now.
Right.
We probably need to have more of a discussion. I would also guess that Dr. Lewis would, you know, the process would benefit from Dr. Lewis engaging the school in, you know, we're stakeholders in this process. What do we want to see in that? And then have a couple of discussions, and whether that might be the next meeting or two or what have you, so that we can clarify this before we hit the go button.
I mean, part of this was, you know, me trying to get some sense of what was possible and what a scope might look like, and pushing this instead of, you know, like a full proposal. This was like very, very top line. So we could, right, between now and the July meeting, try to, and really set aside time in the July meeting to have that discussion much more clearly. The other possibility, just throw this out there since we were talking about this also, is that we have a small task force assigned specifically to the strategic planning work, and that we can work, you know, have that small group really try to figure out how to do that. And I mean, we have new board members too, right, who could be involved in that as well. So actually, now that I'm talking, I'm thinking that's probably the better way to do it, that we want a small group of a couple people really working on defining what we want out of this, like how we want this to come out.
And I don't think by July
So-
that's necessarily going to get done. I think that's, maybe we should shoot for August, because it's summer. And I think that would give us a chance to really decide right in August, right before the school year, what it looks like. And then if we're comfortable, we can engage the services.
So do we want this to be a process that's defined by the board or defined by the community that this process is supposed to serve?
I think it needs to be defined by the board. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I don't see how we can have the entire community in deciding what we want to achieve at the end of it.
I'm not
So, I mean,
suggesting we do that. What I'm
so I
saying
think that we have.
is if this is determine the 3 to 5 priorities that the AMSA board will focus on.
No. I'm talking about we're defining what we're going to look at. At the end of the day, it would be the community's input that would be part of this. This whole like big multi-stakeholder group.
Right.
Everybody would determine.
And so that's why I was advocating that it might be good to go out to, I'm not saying do a survey of the entire community to get the community voting on what is in this, but I think there's some utility of reaching out to, you know, through Dr. Lewis to the faculty to say, hey, we're getting ready to engage in this. What would we want as the faculty to see this? And then maybe looking through the PTO and the CPAC and other parent groups Maybe Dr. Lewis, when he's having his next ED coffee, sitting there saying, hey, look, this is what we're thinking about doing. What would you all like to see as an outcome of this?
And maybe that's driven by the task force itself as to how they can evaluate the steps in the process. And so I think it's a good point, but I like the idea of the task force, and then they can define it a little bit better.
On having a smaller group
Right.
focused on this.
I'm thinking about, Dr. Lewis, maybe it was one of the talks that you gave or speech, whatever, but where you might have talked about, the future of AMSA to be the best school in the nation or something
yep.
like that. And so I think about, okay, well, if that's where we want to be, what does it take and what does that look like? And what part of staying ahead of the curve does it imply that we need to focus on in order to be there? And then sort of aligning, and maybe that's a board, sort of a vision, from the board, and then aligning the various stakeholders with, okay, so how do we get there? Make sure we have everybody aligned with where we want to go. But to me, it's an opportunity to sort of, go to another level.
Yeah.
Especially if we're going to spend this kind of money, that, we really look at it from, okay, here's where we are now, here's where we want to be. Okay, now how do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm going to just say that, we've spent a lot of time already on this. I think we've gone over.
Yeah.
So-
Ken fell down on his timekeeping duties.
I was in favor.
Yeah.
So I would just say that Dr. Lewis did not say that AMSA should be the best school. What he said is, we want to make AMSA the model school. Okay? Different things. Okay? And the reason why I grabbed this is because I didn't hear him say best school. I heard him say model school. Model school for different parents, different students are going to be, different things. So.
Okay, so
All right.
I like best better, because
But,
whatever.
but that's what we would have to determine at the end of it.
Yes.
Is it best, right?
Yes.
Is it model? What is it?
Right. What is
that would be,
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be the goal then.
When you say you like best
so-
better, what is that? When you say best, what about best do you like better? I'm just curious.
In my mind, it's the school with the most innovation, the school that has the highest level of students who are aspiring to new heights, whatever, we have to define that. But part of it is a model. To me, if you are the best school, then you're also a model to the other schools. So I sort of see them somewhat linked together.
That's Ed's definition of wildly successful.
Yeah, and so some parents would say, I think the best school is what has the highest MCAS score.
Yeah,
or
see,
the
that's
most
the
kids
thing.
going
Everyone's-
to
that's-
Harvard or MIT.
Yeah.
And that's
It's all
where
over the
I think
place.
that term best has really got to get teased out.
To me, as a
It's very
board,
different.
we coalesce around what we think it ought to be. And then, to me, we then look to align our stakeholders with that and refine it.
That's not what I heard that the process was, though. I heard the process was going to include going out and talking to stakeholders to get input, not to align those stakeholders with the board's view, but to get input from those stakeholders.
I hear you, so I'm just sharing a little bit of a different
Yeah.
perspective.
Okay.
I know we're running out. This is a really
But this is the
important
key point.
discussion.
Yeah, this is the really key
and I know
point.
we
Just
need
do
to
it in
keep
5
going,
minutes.
but
Right? This is
that
actually
was
the key point.
Really important. So
And that's why I think we have to go through this process somehow, right, in some shape or form. I would suggest that we do form a task force to really look at sort of how to do this a little more carefully. And so I'm curious as to who would be interested in doing this, because it would be really working with this person to define this. I mean, to date, it has been sort of me and Rick. At various times, it's been Chris, because he was involved in previous sort of strategic planning. But curious, so.
Yeah, so I'll share, I hesitate to join. I know you're asking who will join, and I'm saying
No,
not.
I'm asking.
But the reason, because it might help other people to say they will join, is the reason I hesitate to join is because I think this is a slightly amorphous process, right? You go through it, it's iterative, you figure it out as you go along. We don't know what we don't know, basically. And in my mind, we need to understand our values, or whether we say consensus or whatever. Ultimately, we've got to have a finite number of few values, which we all say, these are our values.
Yes.
And some may agree, some may not, but that's what it is. Okay. Then you've also got to have that consensus view of what wildly successful, or maybe consensus view is the wrong term, but that wildly successful view. And then we need to have priorities that the administration has, which may differ than what the board has, which may differ than what other stakeholder groups have, to achieve that wildly successful. Those are the things we want to ultimately accomplish. And if I look at this, just at a high level, it's, phase one, initiation. Let's do some pre-work to figure out how to make this happen, right? And then we kind of go through this process. I think we got enough here to get started. I mean, I'm fine with if there's a group that says, no, this is not enough, we got to figure it out. Great, please help figure it out. But I think we got enough, because I'm not sure a few folks going off is going to get us any closer, to be honest. Except I fear it might just delay us a couple more months from getting started. And last comment, and I joined the board like 3 years ago. And when I joined, I thought we were going to get started on this kind of work. Now, 3 years later, we're ready to get started on this kind of work. And I hear this phenomenal, wonderful speech or talk, and it's not a speech. You're just sharing who you are and what you think and whatever. And it's like, I got
I've never
the
seen
hairs.
this excited. This is
Their hair standing on the back of my neck because it's like, yes, right? And I'm sorry to see you guys go, because you helped to bring us to this point. Thank you. And I see these other members coming on, and I've talked to both of you, and I haven't had the chance to speak with you, unfortunately, but I see the passion there to let's take it. So I just don't want to stop. I want to let's move. Yeah, we might have to fiddle around or work our way through it, but we'll do it. But let's get going.
So I agree with Rick that we have enough to get started. What I wonder is, do we have enough to get finished? And what my fear is that we're going to get to the end of the process and get to the end of the $20,000 and realize that we got started with a process that isn't defined enough to get to us to the finish line.
So, let me clarify. So what she's put together so far is just this range. The very first part of this would actually be to define the process much more specifically and define the outcomes and be able to put together a real proposal with real numbers, right? Because right now that's why it's just sort of a range, so that we can get a sense of what we're talking about. So I think what I'm saying is I think what we would want is someone to really focus on working with her in the first month or two to really design how we could do this.
And isn't that phase one?
Yeah, that was phase one. I mean, it is hard for me and Rick because we have been talking about this the last couple of months with her, so.
So I thought that was interesting, Rick. I understand why we want to get going. So let me ask a question. Would it be awful if we lost 1 month? Is it possible if we brought her to the next meeting to facilitate
a discussion that we have?
20-minute discussion with this group?
That's great.
To just try to, in a professional way, to just kind of herd the cats, get us focused. These folks, they should be able to, on demand, you should be able to kind of tie it together and say, okay, we want to get going in the initiation phase and just kind of rain cannon.
No, I think actually that's a very good.
What are you gonna do?
I think that's
a quick workshop with us for 25 minutes.
Do a pre-workshop.
Great
I think that's fantastic, and I think Ken, your point is fantastic because I think that's going to make sure as we're going through this, we're keeping our eye on the prize of, is this actually going to all come together? Are we going to actually finish?
Great
And
suggestion.
if she can get us through that 20-minute conversation, it's going to around the dang spot. Right there. 20-minute conversation higher.
No, I think that's a great.
30
Let's
minutes
do
on
that.
that, but I
I know,
No way.
but it's important. So okay, let's do that because I do think rather than doing a task force, let me see if we can. She can come to the next meeting, and we may need to move it around a little bit because I think it's important to get our new board members involved also in this particular discussion, since it's very forward-looking. So
Good.
Great.
Do you think she might find it useful to talk to some of the folks beforehand?
possibly, I can.
I was also going to suggest, this whole thing, she might want to watch this conversation.
Yes.
I think it might be useful to hear a little bit what she's walking into.
She's just
No,
gonna
honestly-
say,
Great idea.
Right? I mean,
That is actually a good idea.
who's that guy that's sitting behind the podium?
No, that's a really good idea.
I think that'd be very interesting 30
Yeah.
minutes for her to
No,
just-
that would be very good.
Can we ask her to watch
30
this
minutes?
video of this?
Right, of this
minutes?
discussion.
Tell her to
Right.
open a bottle of wine and just.
And if I could ask if we could just know what the time marking is on,
Yeah.
timestamp on this is, so we can.
I do. I think
Yeah.
that
Okay,
would
no,
be-
that actually, you're right. That would be
Because we
very
won't have to
helpful.
start. She'll
You just won't have to start cold.
Yeah,
Personality.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, let's move on, because we're way behind now, and we still have a really long executive session. Okay, task force updates. Collective bargaining, do you have, do a quick update?
So what's our update, Mike?
Oh my goodness. I don't know how to.
Okay, we can
Let's
just talk
just say
about.
we had 2 sessions. The last session ended in trying to kind of divide up the roles of what we were going to do next. And so admin was tasked with kind of developing a tool for an eval and what that might look like. And then there was some discussion with the faculty for defining some piece of the bonus pool under the collective bargaining agreement. And so that was our last session. I believe we need to reconvene.
Yeah, and
And
we'll
see
talk.
where we're moving, because we need to, hone it now. So that's the next thing.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that in executive session. Okay, regional issues?
Yeah, no progress.
Okay. And facilities, so I just want to give a quick update on what we can say there. There is a facilities task force that right now I wanted to add, make sure I formally add both Lucy and Liz onto the facilities task force. They've already started getting emails, and I also want to formally just say that Craig Holbrook is on the facilities task force. So right now, that's what it looks like, and then in executive session, we'll talk a little bit more about sort of the work plan and all that. But there is, it's a pretty active task force. And that's in addition to myself and Allison and Tom, who have already been on it and have been, or the history sort of with what's going on there.
Tom Taverna, to be clear.
Tom Taverna, yeah. Committee and task force assignments. So this we have in our packets.
I'm gonna go over to governance, by the way.
What? Ken, really? Oh. So these are a draft because I think this is just sort of, we talked about these in governance, right? And this is sort of what we understood. So each year, annually, I'm supposed to appoint trustees to committees. And so the list that we have, it's basically keeping people where they are, I think.
And you can see why Chris and I are both very lonely on the Education and
Yes.
Development Committee.
Yes, well, you don't have the new, these are only existing trustees, they aren't the new ones coming on, we've got new people coming on. But yes, you can see why Chris and Ed and Ken are, in their 2 committees, are very lonely. But could everyone take a look at this and make sure that you're assigned sort of to the right committee?
I was circling that, that's fine. It's in strategic.
Because everyone should be on at least one committee. And right now, everyone is on one committee, and the only person who's on 2 committees is Chris O'Keefe, who I actually didn't get a chance to talk to about this, but he's on 2. Everyone else is on 1 committee.
That's good.
Does anyone want to move whatever committee they're on?
Governance, please.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Okay. If not,
I'm trying to inject some levity in the meeting.
I'm just trying to move this process along.
Told you, I didn't need time.
Ken, bad timekeeping.
Okay, if not, then everybody is appointed to the committees like it shows on this chart. Okay? And then when our new members come on board, they will get appointed to committees as they want to. And then the task forces, I just want to say task forces are they're time bound. And so I want to just formally say, if we didn't do it before, because I'm not sure we did, the climate task force should be disbanded. There is no further climate task force. I know you were on some, right? But it's now we talked about the fact that it's sort of systemic in how the board operates, so it's not that we aren't paying attention to climate, but we don't need a task force associated with it anymore.
And we're not talking about climate change, right, Pauline?
Right, exactly. We don't want to change the climate, so so that was what the climate task force was supposed to try to understand it. And then these other task forces are the ones that are currently in existence, and they will move around if necessary. They'll be disbanded at some point in time, but right now this is what they are. So I just want everyone to kind of look at it and make sure that's right, and that no one is
Collective bargaining.
everybody knows sort of what their task forces they're on. So, and these will continue for some period of time. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Good. So that's just where we are. Okay. Now we're moving on. Actually, can I move this around a little bit more while we're doing these like housekeeping things? Can we let's jump to governance and have them do the
Can we,
housekeeping things?
is there a presentation? Or
No.
can we bring up the education committee presentation?
Sorry, can't.
Can we do? Okay, no problem.
Shoot, that's too bad. Can we, because we can't email it to you because you have no Wi-Fi access, huh?
Oh, I have a Wi-Fi access. So if you email it to me, it's fine. I just can't get to the records on Board on Track because I'm restricted right now.
Oh, why don't I sign in as you then?
Sure.
Why don't we?
So how about if I email it to him?
No, he's.
Yeah, you can do that.
That would work too. Yeah, that would work too. Okay. So while we're doing that, can we do the governance, the bylaw revisions, and the policy?
Yes, why don't we do the policy first?
Okay.
I don't think it's in, well, it's not in the packet, it's all that we're trying to project up, I guess.
No, it should be in the package.
Is it in the package?
Yeah, they're all in the packets.
Term of the office of trustee.
The bylaws thing is. Yeah, the term of office of trustees. That's the bylaws revision.
No, I said, why don't we do first, well, it's the ex officio committee member policy, the policy. I don't
Oh,
think that's in the
Sarah, did you
package.
ever upload that? Oh, okay.
Yeah. That one we need to vote on.
Yeah, but we don't have it. We don't have
It's
it.
very short, I can probably just talk to it.
Yeah,
You
why
want
don't you
the
just talk to it?
You want the Gmail account? Or
Yeah,
okay.
please.
Okay, so we have a policy which we're looking to vote on, which is titled Ex Officio Committee Member Policy. Background, the purpose of this policy is to help ensure highly effective committees by including AMSA administrative staff with relevant expertise in designated committees of the board. You might remember at the last board meeting, I talked about where, for example, the education committee, we're saying, boy, it would really be good to make sure we have the principal attend the education committee on a regular basis. Finance and audit, the business manager. In some cases, this is already happening, so this is really just formalizing it. In governance, director of accountability, Sarah already attends. So this is sort of formalizing that, and we said, and the purpose of it really was prior to drafting this, the discussions were around trying to make sure we had better engagement of certain, be it administrative or faculty positions, so we're a little bit closer aligned with the board. So really, with this particular policy, there are 3 committees which we are adding, proposing that we add 3 faculty or administrative positions: principal to education, business manager to the finance audit committee, and director of accountability to the governance committee. And then implementation, it says the committee chairs will appoint the above ex, and this is a voting position, ex voting official members to their respective committees in accordance with section 5.1 of our bylaws. And then we have a policy number A110. So it's a very short policy for what it contains. Any questions on it? No? Okay, with that, I would make a motion that we accept the policy as stated. This is policy A110.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion passes
I'm
unanimously.
sorry, Liz.
That's okay, I'm good. Oh, yeah.
I forgot, I'm sorry, Liz.
Okay,
Okay, and then this...
so bylaws are in here. Yeah.
Yes, the second one, which is in the package
Yes.
here, which is term of offices of trustees.
You have both clean and red line versions of this.
Yeah, yes.
Yep.
And so if you look at, see the red line, yeah. So if you look at this, this is really focused on addressing those individuals who were previously on the board at one time, and then are under consideration for rejoining the board after a certain period of time. And so, and I'm looking at the red line version here.
Yeah, it's the faculty and parent
Yeah.
rep. That's really the
So
issue.
I got it, I'm looking at an A and a B.
Yep.
Okay, and so the first part being the faculty representative, and what you see in red here, a trustee who is not the faculty representative or parent representative may serve for 2 consecutive terms, but in no event shall any trustee be elected to a term that would end after their 7th consecutive year of service. Notwithstanding the foregoing, a trustee who is not the faculty representative, parent representative, who has served 2 consecutive terms may be re-elected to the board after an absence of 1 year from the board. And that speaks to the faculty representative.
Now,
No,
wait a
that
minute.
speaks to not the faculty representative.
Wait a minute with that language, wait a minute.
Yeah, could you
Maybe-
just simplify?
could I-
Just tell
No,
us
it's
what
not that, I mean, you read it right, but I'm trying to understand. A trustee who's not the faculty representative, the parent rep, may serve for 2 consecutive terms, but in no event shall any trustee be elected to a term that would end after the 7th consecutive year of service. So how would that happen?
So if you, and Pauline, you may even want to speak to this, if you started a term like mid-year, and
Yeah,
it's a
that's what it
3-year
is.
term, and it
Yep.
would take you beyond your 7th year.
We actually had
You'd
this
have
with
to
both
truncate
Roger
it.
and Craig the last time when they were elected to their 2nd terms. It's possible for your first term to be really long.
Well, we have this with Raul now,
Yeah,
because his first
so.
term is going to be 4 years, essentially,
Yeah,
right?
essentially.
Right.
Right, that's why.
So
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you saying that Raul could not be elected again?
Yeah, he can be elected for a 2nd term. It's just that the 2nd term cannot be longer than 7 years total. The 2nd term couldn't be another 4
Yeah,
years.
But because
I
it's
don't think
consecutive, it's always going to be 3 years. So it's actually almost impossible to get into this situation.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to get into the situation. It is technically possible because someone could be, if you're elected an officer, then your term's extended. So maybe he's in his 4 years and then he gets elected as secretary, and just based on the timing, it may end up being 5 years, the first term. So his 2nd term could not be the full 3 years, it would only be 2 years.
So you're suggesting that if you're the faculty rep or the parent rep and you've served for 2 years, then you would serve only for, are you talking about that transition piece? I just,
So
I know-
A is meant to be faculty, is meant to be non-faculty or a parent. Okay, so A is just not them, but all other trustees.
Right.
B is supposed to be faculty and parent. So the faculty and parent reps right now can serve 2 consecutive terms.
right.
And then and what we're trying to propose, before it said you have to take a year off, and now we're saying you can actually just be voted on right away. But, your normal 3-year term. So you could serve consecutively, but they would only be able to, so if they did a 3rd term, it would be out 5 years, right? And their 2nd term as a trustee would have to be truncated. It would have to be only 2 years.
What I'm trying to understand is I'm not sure what the point of this sentence is. If we are
Which sentence?
excluding faculty reps or parent reps, I'm in A, I'm still in A.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
If we are excluding faculty reps and parent reps
Yeah.
from this
Yep.
section A here,
Yep.
then why do we need that sentence in there if it's already been demonstrated that in any event, no consecutive terms would extend past 7 years of service?
For a non-faculty rep or a parent rep?
Yeah. I'm not sure, why do we have that sentence in there?
Because it's theoretically possible to get there.
So Pauline, is it that the law forces it to be exactly 7 years for total continuous service?
It is not the law, it is what our bylaws were. This is what we had. This part hasn't changed. I mean, the wording is moved around.
No, I know,
it's
but I'm
changed.
not sure that, I mean.
You're saying it may not be relevant
It may
anymore
not be
because how we get
relevant, and
there.
I certainly think it's confusing. I don't prefer it.
Yeah.
And I'm just not sure why it's there.
Yeah, I think it's theoretically possible. If you've got someone who's there for almost 4 years, and then they get elected, so say Raul's there for 4 years, and he's got a second term, and
That's what I'm thinking about.
Right, and he could get elected in his 6th year as an officer, which would be 2 terms, which would be 2 years, which would automatically extend the term. And you can't do that, basically. It's got to be 7 consecutive years, and that's it. Nobody can have more than 7 consecutive years. So, I should add also, so this is actually slightly different than what we talked about in governance, because this had to go through pre-approval by Dees before we were allowed to vote on it.
Oh.
And so that's why Dees actually looked at it and changed some of the wording.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's slightly different.
Pauline,
Yeah.
I have a question. I think I see, maybe I might be getting it wrong, but I think I see what Allison may be concerned about. It
Yeah.
says, but in no event shall any trustee be elected to a term
Yep.
that would end after the 7th consecutive year of service.
Right.
What you really mean is, he can be elected, but if they need to cut it short to make it 7
Oh,
years,
that's what you're saying.
happens.
Yeah, thank
Right.
you.
Yep.
Tom, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. That's what my concern is. So can we just,
Oh, but that's already addressed in the first sentence. You have to look at the 2 sentences
no,
together.
I know, but that's why I don't like that sentence. I feel like it's superfluous to a certain extent. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm putting my 2
Oh, I
cents in now.
see.
I should have objected to it earlier or something, but I've been bogged down with other issues, other board issues.
Yeah, it says, in which case the term shall be shortened so that the trustees serve 7
Right,
years.
so why do we need that next sentence?
Allison, that sentence has been in there, and it's just moving. Because it's actually the red down here, it just moved. It's exactly the sentence that was in there before, if you look at the red line.
Oh, they moved it up.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Okay.
But it's been in there.
I
so-
get it. I get it. I
Yeah.
don't like it. I think it's not in a good place. I think it's modifying language that is confusing, and it doesn't make it clear. I'm not sure we need it, but if Dees has already approved it, then I'll stop right there.
The main goal of the changes was to separate out the stakeholder reps from the non-stakeholder reps.
Right.
Because our language
Right.
before had
No,
it.
I
that-
know, I just,
Yeah.
but I'm glad this at least explains
Mm-hmm.
why I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a little verbose.
Okay, apologize.
No,
Keep
no,
going, Evan.
No, I think it's probably easier to just read what's in front of you, and if there are questions, let's try to address the questions. So this would be B, which would be for faculty representative and parent representative. And she'll be less than 1 year. I mean, she'll be 1 year unless the end of the term of the faculty representative, parent representative expires before the end of the academic year, in which case the term shall be extended to the end of the academic year. If the faculty representative or parent representative filled a vacancy and served a partial term of less than 6 months, then such partial term shall not be considered a term for the purposes of the previous sentence. And then you have a faculty representative or parent representative may serve 2 consecutive terms as a faculty representative or parent representative respectively. Any faculty representative or parent representative who has 2 consecutive terms may be elected as a trustee by the board without status as a faculty representative or parent representative, subject to term limits as described in 2.4A and 2.4C. In no event shall any trustee serve more than 20 years. I responded in governance when I saw that. My first reaction was 20 years.
Yeah.
Imagine.
It's like I told
like
you,
our
don't
lease.
get out.
Yeah,
Just don't get
disease,
out.
right.
Okay, I'm not saying anything else.
Excuse me, Pauline.
Yep.
Since I was involved, may I say something?
Sure.
Yes.
You're actually right about that. I think that Dee's, their wording was only the last sentence here.
Yep.
This one up here that got moved, I think it got moved by accident, actually. I think that Pauline is right. If you take that one sentence, a trustee was not the faculty rep, blah, 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 to the 7th year's service, because it does mimic what's up there, and you keep notwithstanding. You just strike that. I think you actually have it all in here.
You're saying to strike the section after, but in no event shall any trustee?
No, just
No.
take out a trustee who's not the faculty rep, that one sentence that ends with their 7th consecutive year of service, because you already say that.
Exactly.
And then use the wording that the state gave you, which is the last sentence. That was their rewording. And so I think that you could actually do that Allison is saying correctly, because that is confusing. I think
But otherwise, we don't ever say that there's 2 consecutive terms.
I think you do. Yeah, but you keep that one, notwithstanding the foregoing, you keep that one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So actually, you're right. Now, if we delete that middle sentence, it's all
Yeah,
there.
it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I'll be happier. It's just better. I don't think.
These would be fine with that, right? I mean, because they were really
Well, because
focused
it
on
wasn't
the
here
office.
either, Sarah. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
in the original, right.
That's right.
Okay.
It moved.
Yes.
It used to be in the second thing.
And it was
but-
okay down there. It's not, it's just
So we're deleting the one sentence.
this
Yep.
one here. See,
Yep.
a trustee may serve 2 consecutive
They were focused
terms,
on the
but
other.
It was originally here, and then they moved it up here.
So Pauline, just
It's
the
not
last
here,
one is,
actually, but it's moved up in
it's a
here for
total of
trustee.
20 years?
Yeah, yeah.
They moved it
A
up.
total of 20 years. That's just so, because people can go on and off the board 7 years and then 1 year off and then
But all
7
said and
come
done,
back on.
20 is the.
Yeah.
But absolutely never more than 20 years.
Sorry, Mike.
Remember that, Ken.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve this with the removal of that one sentence. Allison?
No, I know, I just want
Okay.
to make sure I'm 100% clear.
Yep.
Yeah, because it says, in which case the term shall be shortened so that the trustees
Yeah,
serve
it
7
does
years.
say it.
Yes, I motion to approve this new policy with the exception of the sentence beginning with a trustee who is not the faculty representative, ending in the 7th consecutive year of service, which is Part A, Paragraph A, under
Yeah.
2.4.
Okay. It's not a policy, it's bylaws.
Sorry, bylaws, sorry.
Okay. A second?
I second it.
Liz
Ed
was
seconded.
gonna do that.
Oh, oh, Liz, I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
these governance people, they like these governance themes. All right, all in favor? Okay. Motion passes unanimously, so we will submit this to DEIS tomorrow.
Yay.
And hopefully they will be able to approve quickly, and we may be able to elect another person on as a trustee afterwards. Okay, now let's move to our Ed Committee report.
You got 15 minutes, Ken. I'll be taking your time.
Yes, exactly.
All right, you all have a copy of this in your packet. Do you mind if I drive it, Rick?
Sure, absolutely. All yours.
Okay, Okay, so on behalf of the Education Committee, as we did last year, I just wanted to come in and report out to you about our progress. And so I'm going to talk about our mission, our membership, our mission, and the tasks that we've worked on. Also give you an update of progress on this year's goals, and then lay out some recommendations, 3 recommendations specifically. One around a strategic decision framework that we've started working towards. Another one talking about department strategic perspectives, and I'll explain what we mean by that. And then also by analyzing demographic trends for AMSA. And again, I'll go into detail on that, and then talk about goals for the coming year. So this is the current committee membership, which includes me, Liz, Tom, Dr. Lewis, Ellen, who are here. Lauren Bechlein is here, as well as Jess Hennessy. Sharon and Jen are not here. We've had some folks who have been regular guests, such as Ms. Bondaroo, that has also benefited the committee by coming to our meetings and providing their perspectives. I also just want to give you an update about what's happening in the coming year. So Liz, of course, is coming off as parent rep, but has agreed to stay on the education committee. Tom, of course, is coming off as well. I had a discussion with Dr. Lewis about both he and Ellen being on the education committee, and so what we discussed was Ellen being the primary point person as the principal, and he'll certainly come in as he feels appropriate, and he's welcome to do so, and so forth. And then Ellen will stay on. Lauren Beschlein and Jess are going to be staying on. Sharon Hamill and Jen Holton, both of whom have been longtime members of the Education Committee and appreciate their service, are dropping off. So we taking a look at the coming year. Of course, we have two new parent rep and a faculty rep, both of whom I've been lobbying to be on the Education Committee, but obviously they'll have a chance to choose that. We also, Rich Harnett is a parent, and he's been a regular attendee at the meeting, is coming on. Jean, as I said, has also agreed to come on, and Julie as well. Julie is on the PTO and is going to be able to provide that, and Jean obviously is going to be able to provide faculty perspective as well as from his corporate experience, a corporate perspective as well.
Jill and Brianna, you have a choice here, just because your names are on here.
I already explained them both that they're on here because...
He's so possessive.
So...
Fighting with the jealous love. I know.
I just wanted you guys to know, it'd be easier just for me to leave you on the slide and take you off.
Otherwise, you have to edit the slide.
All right, so the mission here, you've seen this before. This is straight out of the bylaws. And so we're responsible for monitoring academic excellence, ensuring progress towards objectives set out in the accountability plans in the area of academic success, and ensuring faithfulness to the terms of the charter. And so therefore doing that, we provide pre-board support, meaning we do work to offer to the board and as it exercises its powers as outlined. And so there's three of them that pertain particularly to us in terms of determining educational goals. These are three powers that the Board of Trustees reserves to itself, and so the Education Committee supports the board in carrying these out. These powers, as outlined in Section 2.1, are to determine the educational goals of AMSA, approve a curriculum, and approve and monitor progress towards meeting the goals in the accountability plan. So this is our mission. So in doing that, we have different things that we will be working towards. So obviously studying strategic issues at that governance level relating to two areas, academic program success and faithfulness to the charter. Reporting out findings from that study and our recommendations to the board so that they can take action. So this might be, for example, taking a look at sort of at a strategic level at student demographic trends or curriculum trends and making recommendations on that, or taking a look at budgets and resources that pertain to the academic program and making recommendations on that as well.
Sorry.
You're kicking me.
Sorry.
So, all right, supporting, we also support the development of strategic goals. So out in, many schools have district-defined goals, and so we would be doing something similar in terms of saying this is what we're going to do relative to our academic program. One of the things that I talked about last year is that to do these things well requires the Education Committee to go through training. It also requires us to make the board aware of its responsibilities and probably do some light training around these responsibilities in terms of academic program success. How would we evaluate that? and what do we mean by faithfulness to the charter. So we would do that as well. And then we would also want to conduct a self-evaluation of our work and our accomplishments so that we can use that information to improve our committee's work over time. So this year we lost a couple of meetings, one due to weather. We did end up making up one meeting in May. Obviously there was the turnover in the administration halfway through, so we didn't get everything done that we were wanting to do, but we did start looking at a strategic decision framework that I'm going to lay out for you in a little bit more detail. We're obviously making a report to the board again this year. I hope to do that every year. We didn't take any action on making budget recommendations. Again, we weren't really in a position to do that, and we deferred doing any sort of training and awareness activities until the next year. And we did not get around to doing our committee evaluation, but again, we're going to try to do that for this year. The first recommendation we have, and we're not ready with specifics on this, but I did want to lay out to sort of where we are, is to provide a framework to the board for discussing and making decisions about AMSA's faithfulness to the charter, academic program success. These are two areas that the Education Committee does have responsibility for. There's a third area that is defined, and we'll probably just incorporate that. This doesn't have a direct Education Committee responsibility, but again, because it was laid out in the Mass Charter School Performance Criteria, these three areas, faithfulness to charter, academic program success, and organizational viability, then we thought we would just go ahead and include that in our recommendation to you. So so we've looked at the charter school performance criteria and started laying this out. There are 10 criteria in this document that are in the three areas of faithfulness to the charter, academic program success, and organizational viability. We'll also want to examine the AMSA charter, because obviously we're faithful to the charter. We need to understand what the charter is. And then we also are looking at the DEAS summary of review. So the document that we talked about that Dr. Lewis talked about earlier is an update of this review for this year. But the last time a full review was done was in preparation for our rechartering. So that was done in February 2015. And so this is a full review in these three areas, and then there's two updates, one in 2016, which Dr. Lewis sent to us, and one that has already been posted, thank you, for this year. So we'll be reviewing that as well.
Ken, is that still relevant, the 2015?
So it is, so that's a great question. Great question. Okay. And the reason why it's a great question is when the charter school performance criteria does not fully define how DEAS will assess faithfulness to the charter, academic program success, or organizational viability. But this summary of review is the one document that they have committed. They've said this is how we are evaluating AMSA in those three areas. And so it very much is still, because this is the full one. It's been updated twice so far, but this is the full one that we've looked at.
The updates are subsets, though.
I'm sorry?
The updates are subsets.
Correct.
Correct. It's
Yes.
not the whole thing.
That's great. And so, so this is, so when you sit there and say, what does it mean to be faithful to the charter? It doesn't say this in the charter school performance criteria in detail. But the summary review says, this is how we've assessed AMSA and its faithfulness to the charter, or its academic program success and organizational viability. And then the last thing is also to take a look at the accountability plan, because this accountability plan, which was also done for our rechartering, is our commitment to how we will be assessed. It does go into the key design elements and so forth, and then we report out annually on how we're doing against that accountability plan. So these are all the areas in terms of, so this provides a framework, and it's still very much a work in progress, but it provides a framework then for us as a board, as we're sitting here saying, okay, we're making a decision in this, how does this stack up to the way that DEES evaluates our performance? Okay. So those, sorry, was it?
Just as a time,
yeah, go ahead.
4 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I will pay as much attention to that as I can. Okay, so faithfulness to the charter, there's 4 elements here. The mission and key design elements, access and equity, compliance and dissemination. These are the 4 criteria that they look at in terms of evaluating our faithfulness to the charter. And then there's also 3 criteria relative to academic program success. These are taken straight out of the charter school performance criteria document. So student performance, program delivery, and culture and family engagement. Imagine that. Okay, and then the organizational viability takes a look at our capacity, our governance, and of course finances, as you might imagine. So those are the 3 areas that we are basing this strategic decision framework. As I said, it's very much a product a work in progress. So the second recommendation came out of a discussion that we had at a recent Education Committee, and I think Tom was the one who sort of initiated the discussion, and everybody picked it up very enthusiastically about the idea of having each department come and talk to the board about the strategy that they are pursuing in the department. So this is at that governance level. It allows a governance level discussion. Probably more useful than trying to do the whole school at once, but focus on each discrete department at a time. And then taking a look at sort of a strategic level master plan, if you will, of a vision of wildly successful, which would include the connection to the charter of that vision. And then the strategies we're expecting to carry out in order to achieve that vision, and an alignment of resources, staff, and dollars, and facilities and equipment and so forth to support that strategy, to make sure that, and this is an iterative process, because you say, well, this is where we're headed, and this is what we're going to do to get there, and here are the resources. Well, geez, are we ready to commit those resources to carrying that out? And then how would we measure success and progress along the way, and then what are the needs and priorities in carrying that out? So just sort of a framework here for having these strategic presentations that we would then schedule. Another discussion, we had another discussion.
Are you suggesting that happens at the board level? These are board presentations or at the ed committee?
So I think at first they would be the education committee, and then once we've done that, then they would come forward. Now, Dr. Lewis had talked to the department heads, and they were also talking about how it might be very useful for some of us to go into the classroom, talk to them directly at the school, and so we're still trying to figure out the specifics of this. Okay. All right. So then the last meeting we talked about, and Ellen Lindsay brought this up. Was talking about some of the demographics, and we are seeing a shift in demographic trends, and some of these demographic trends have a longer term impact on AMSA's academic program. And sometimes these impacts aren't really easy, or they're complex, they're not easy to understand. So an example, there's just a couple of examples here. The shift of the student population away from the non-core towns to the core towns, and of course more recently with Marlborough and us bumping up against our limit on Marlborough, then what are we going to do about that? How do we what do we need to do to maintain the educational experience for the other core towns to be more attractive to students and so forth? What might we want to do to our academic program in order to support more kids that maybe don't live in Marlboro but live at a distance? Sure.
Can we look to other schools who have gone through some of this transition to help kind of guide our recommendations? You know,
No one else has really gone through this sort of transition.
Really? That unique that
Yeah,
way?
it was that unique because, you know, the city of Marlboro sued the state granting the charter when the school started, and no one else has really had that experience. So other charter schools did,
Wow.
yeah, there's nothing to look at to figure out that shift. It's such a weird situation that we had, our history.
Another one is a sort of recent influx of the numbers. We've always had 7th and 8th and 9th graders and, you know, some number coming in, but there's been a more recent higher influx of those students. And what does that mean for students that are coming in, you know, into, you know, the program, in the academic program in progress, and what are ways that we can help those new students integrate? And that's something that the school is also facing. So this isn't designed other than to give a couple of examples, certainly not a comprehensive list here.
Actually, I think it's new, the 8th and 9th graders coming in.
Yeah, I'm just.
The 9th graders, yeah.
Is that just sort of a one-off, or do we think that's a trend?
No, that's going to continue.
Do we know why?
Yeah, because the way that the these regulations changed in 2014, I think, or it got clarified that, or maybe it was even earlier, that you have to backfill at the grade.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that AMSA didn't face this issue is because we were over-enrolled with that class of 2016.
Oh.
And so because we were over-enrolled, we had more discretion and were able to just re-enroll. But once they graduated,
Now we have.
now you have to, if it's a
spots.
9th grader leaving, you can't replace them with a 6th grader. You have to replace them with a 9th grader.
Okay.
So, you know, I was, you know, when I was here at the orientation the other night, I was talking to a parent I know who's got a 9th grader who's coming in. And, you know, there's some anxiety around that. Now, the school, you know, it's not like the school hasn't prepared for this. I'm not
Right.
trying to suggest that, but the numbers are, you know, getting bigger, and that's
Bigger.
something that we're going to have to
And it's
face.
not one.
So again, this is the idea is, you know, taking a look at assessing this. Again, we've just begun to study some trends, and there's a lot of work that remains to be done in this area. So goals for the coming year is to continue working and try to complete this strategic decision framework, present it to the board for review and comment and revision. Second, to start to schedule department strategic presentations and try to come up with a model that works. Like, would they come in and talk to the education committee? Would the education committee come into the school? You know, and then how does that move on then to the board so that the board is also getting the benefit of that? I still would like to develop some light training and awareness level orientation, if you will, for the education committee and the board as a whole. Do a deeper dive into the demographics. Just as last year when we came to you, the education committee is also interested in soliciting from the board guidance on what the board would like the education committee to work on in the coming year. And then finally, I still would like to get a member on the education committee who has sort of an outside educational perspective in the charter, you know, school world and so forth. So,
So those are a lot of goals. So I don't mean to add one, but you took off budget recommendations, and so I'm trying to think about the value of that goal. Why for 2016-17 that was something you wanted to do and it's fallen off?
So I think we are in order to have budget recommendations, you gotta, you know, there's there's policy or program recommendations that have got to go along, and then say, in order to support these program recommendations, this is the budget that you need in order to do that.
So do you see that
So
coming back on for the year after?
so at some point, you know,
Half year
I'm sorry?
Half year even, I mean.
So, you know, if we're going to sit there and say, we need to adopt this technology, then you can sit there and say, here's the budget that's got to go along with adopting that technology. So, it's not going to fall off of it. It's just that, you know, it is a long list, as you said,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and that's it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Very good.
Anybody have any other comments? There are members of the committee here.
Thank you for working on that.
How much time did it take?
You're just 5 minutes over.
That's not bad. 20 minutes.
I spoke fast.
You did.
Good work, Ken.
You see my 78-page report as an appendix to the minutes.
Well, thankfully, we have no finance committee report this month.
Wait, you mean I could have taken more time?
And we have a brief development committee report. I'm going to read a statement from Chris O'Keefe. So, on the annual giving campaign, following a fourth appeal, we had a surge in giving, bringing our current total up to $24,000, just above last year's final total of $23,000. A last call solicitation will be sent out on Sunday. Each solicitation has had a significant response, so we hope to report a higher final total at the end of June. The response overall was disappointing, and we are looking at reasons why. One factor was that for a variety of reasons, we were unable to use student volunteers this year, resulting in lower visibility. Proceeds will be applied to the upgrading of the nurse's office, and the campaign will be prominently recognized for its support as a first step toward a much more proactive and visible campaign in 2018. And the June committee meeting was canceled due to lack of quorum. So that's our 2-minute development committee update.
So I just, I know we need to be careful in terms of what we talk about with facilities and things like that, but I want to make sure that's a proper allocation of the funds to update the nurse's office if we have any plans in the future to do something different. So I would just, for a separate time, I would just call into question whether or not that is the best appropriation of those funds.
This was arrived at after discussion with the school, and it's specific to, it's not, how did he word it? The upgrading of the nurse's office isn't necessarily capital type expenditures as opposed to sort of outfitting and
Okay, so
moving and those sorts
it's
of
portable.
things. The things that we can bring with us.
All right, let's just confirm that's good. Okay,
that's
thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that closes the open session of our meeting, and with that, I will take a motion to move to executive session to talk about litigation strategies, to consider the purchase and lease of real property, and discuss strategy for negotiating with represented and non-represented personnel.
So moved.
Okay, Allison? Liz?
I will second it.
All right, all in favor?
No.
Roll call, right?
You have to roll call.
Do we have to do roll call?
Yes.
Oh, okay, roll call, sorry.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Good. All right. So I'm going to note that we are inviting Dr. Lewis and Ellen Lindsay in for executive session. We are inviting Brianna Murphy, Jill Schaefer, Raul Porras, and Jean Petnelli in as well. And they will be recused at the appropriate time.